Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Eisenhower Award dinner. I'm Norty Schwartz, the President and CEO of Business Executives for National Security. And your Master of Ceremonies and the person that asks you to rise and be seated and listen up from time to time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. What a thrill it is to be with you tonight, to have a crowd of accomplished and patriotic Americans that we have amongst us this evening. BENS is committed to bringing the best business minds to bear, and they are in this room tonight, on the most complex national security issues. We have a proud track record of achievement. BENS solutions have saved valuable taxpayer dollars through the best practices learned in the business and the private sector. We've strengthened our military and homeland security, and we built a safer and a stronger America. We have an extraordinary program planned for tonight. We will first present the Eisenhower Award to General John Allen, the Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition to Counter ISIL, which of course is the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, known in the media as ISIS. And let me also mention, as an aside, that when we honor John, we also honor Kathy. Kathy is here tonight as well, and you need to appreciate what a marvelous American couple this is. Then we will serve dinner because John has to catch an airplane to do mission this evening. But Kathy, fortunately, will be staying with us, and John, I promise I will take very good care of her. We'll serve dinner after John's award, and then we will resume our program with presenting the Eisenhower Award to Kevin Plank, CEO of Under Armour. Tonight, we will also mark the 50th anniversary of U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War with a special acknowledgement of someone who is well known to all BENS members, and that is General Chuck Boyd. And we'll also recognize and express appreciation to Sergeant Brian Anderson and his wife Kelly, a heroic member and a heroic couple of the United States Special Operations Command. Introducing our first honoree this evening is BENS Chairman, well known to all of us, Bruce Mosler, who is the Chairman of Global Brokerage at the commercial real estate services firm Cushman & Wakefield. His love of country and passion for supporting our veterans is so very well known. And BENS is fortunate, truly fortunate, to have the benefit of his experience and his commitment to addressing the national security and leadership challenges of our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Chairman Bruce Mosler.
General Schwartz, thank you for that overly kind introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and members of our military. As you all know, General Norty Schwartz is an extremely accomplished leader who is doing extraordinary things for BENS. We are very fortunate to have him at our helm after his nearly 4-decade-long career with the United States Air Force. I want to thank our members who hail from all over the country and the board of directors at BENS, because without you and your extraordinary support, we simply could not do what we do every day. BENS brings ingenuity, innovation, and efficiency to our nation's security. That nonpartisan mission never wavers or alters, regardless of who controls Congress or the White House. As part of our work in this space, we're privileged to honor individuals in the national security and business sectors whose personal ethos and life's work have made significant contributions to their communities and, more importantly, to our country. This evening is absolutely no exception. Tonight, we honor General John Allen, Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition to Counter ISIL, for his extraordinary ongoing service to our country. And we also honor Kevin Plank, Chief Executive Officer of Under Armour, for all that he has done for veterans and for giving back to the communities in which he lives and works. Ladies and gentlemen, we also honor the men and women whose lives illustrate remarkable service to country. We remember tonight, as every night, that around the globe there are great patriots in harm's way, prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedoms. We owe they and their families a huge debt of gratitude. Would those here with us tonight who have served or are currently serving in the military please stand so that we may recognize you. Thank you. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for your sacrifices. As the world continues to evolve into an increasingly more complex and dangerous place, macroeconomically, geopolitically, and otherwise, we as a country find ourselves facing significant choices. With every decision we make on a score of pressing issues, we choose to either uphold or to diminish our legacy of leadership. In the face of ongoing threats of aggression by terrorist actors as well as nation states, we must again lead with a vision for the future that provides clarity, continuity, and confidence, both for our allies and foes alike. But to do this, we must recognize strategic opportunities when and where they arise. In recent months in the Middle East, we've seen a remarkable alignment of interests occur between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, other Arab states, Jordan, and Israel, as they team up with the common purpose of fighting the Islamic State, known as ISIS or ISIL. These countries have been on the front lines of terrorism for many years. This new interest in cooperation presents an unprecedented opportunity for laying aside differences for the sake of common objectives in the fight against global terror. The administration's recent lifting of the weapons freeze with Egypt should enable that nation to project greater influence in the region at a critical time, and folks, that's a step in the right direction. Turning to Iraq, Afghanistan, and that country that they both border, Iran, we must make fundamental decisions over the way forward in this region. And developing a lasting peace must be our overarching goal. With Iran, we seek through dialogue to find a peaceful solution to their ongoing quest for strategic dominance. But we must not, and we cannot forget their growing role in underwriting terror in that region. This preference for peace should inform our view of the nuclear enrichment framework recently announced by the administration. And while this deal may represent progress, for true strategic progress, there must be broad, bipartisan support for the accord in our country and with our allies. In other parts of the world, we continue to face the reality of an aggressive regime in Russia, on the move in the Ukraine, and in many ways seeking to redefine the landscape in Europe. The future of NATO will be defined by the choices we make now, and not years from now. We must make clear to Russia by our actions what is not acceptable to America and our European allies. Ladies and gentlemen, I truly lack the time necessary to delve into all the challenges that we face. Suffice it to say that the United States sits at crossroads, and the world looks to us for our wisdom, our leadership, and our strength. As business leaders, we see the global changes occurring firsthand, and we understand from experience why a commitment to leadership is so important to our national and economic security. Our ability to lead effectively relies upon our country's strength through our capacity to credibly project the many facets of American power. That is why sequestration has been as you have heard me say often, a serious mistake. It breaks the backbone of our military, and as I've said before, in point of fact, we are not accomplishing the stated goal of reducing overhead. Our fighting force cannot be made to compensate for a lack of financial assurance. We must show our support for our own warriors, thus assuring our allies and frankly warning our enemies that America is a strong nation ready to lead. President Kennedy said, and we should follow his wise words, "This nation, conceived in revolution, nurtured in liberty and maturing in independence, has no intention of abdicating its leadership." Our leadership as a nation is only as strong as our leaders. That is why I'm particularly pleased to present the Eisenhower Award tonight to General John Allen. His knowledge of the world's landscape and the depth of his experience means that we are in extraordinarily capable hands. General Allen is a retired U.S. Marine four-star who was appointed by the President last September, as you heard Nordy say, to serve as the Special Presidential Envoy for the global coalition to counter ISIL. Beyond qualified to serve in this role, he brings a wealth of experience in the Middle East and Southwest Asia regions. He was the commander of the NATO International Security Assistance Force and U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He was a driving force in making the surge a success during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was also deputy commander at CENTCOM, and he was a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense on security in the Middle East. A graduate of the Naval Academy, General Allen holds advanced degrees from Georgetown, the National Defense Intelligence College, and the National War College. We are extremely fortunate to have leaders like General John Allen with great judgment and experience to answer the call and make a decisive difference yet again. Now that he is back in harness, we have an opportunity for success in degrading and defeating the Islamic State. As he has written about our nation, America is the only power capable of organizing a coalition's reaction to this regional and international threat. Ladies and gentlemen, in General John Allen, we have a Marine, a scholar, and a great statesman. General, would you please join me on the stage? This may go on a little while. General, this is the part that I have to read. On behalf of BENS, we are extremely pleased to present you with our 2015 Eisenhower Award for your total dedication and service to our country. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Thank you so much. As General Schwartz, as Nordy said, I apologize in advance. I have to leave right away. I leave my better half in every possible measurable way, Kathy, with you this evening, who I fear, unless Nordy supervises it closely, may be trading up from marine economy to business class. So I'm leaving at my own peril. Mr. Mosler, thank you for your friendship, and thank you for this generous introduction. And Mr. Weiss, I deeply appreciate your stewardship of this organization and the service BENS performs in bringing critical national security issues to the forefront of the American conversation. I also want to thank the entire BENS board and everyone who has organized this magnificent gala for bringing together this august group of entrepreneurs, innovators, and of course, patriots. It's also a privilege to share the Eisenhower Award with an entrepreneur who embodies the American ideal of innovation and free enterprise, and who has done so much in both his personal and his professional life, Mr. Plank, for our troops and for our own national security. And sir, it's an honor to be with you this evening, and congratulations on your receipt of this award. Another one of the patriots with us tonight, and one of our hosts, perhaps the MC, I think he refers to himself, is a dear friend, General Nordy Schwartz, who served as the Chief of Staff of the Air Force when I was our NATO commander in Afghanistan. As we fought the Taliban, there was a point in the campaign when our need for air-breathing reconnaissance and full-motion video became critical to the success of the campaign. And it was General Schwartz who made some very tough decisions within the United States Air Force to provide me the assets that I desperately needed as a theater commander. While it turned out well for my intelligence needs and for the U.S. Air Force, I'll always remember, and I will never miss the chance to publicly state what a service chief, in this case General Nordy Schwartz, personally did for our war effort and for our hard-pressed commander in combat. And Nordy, thank you so much for your leadership and your many contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct privilege to be with each of you tonight. Particularly, it is an honor to receive an award bearing the name of one of our nation's most revered commanders and courageous leaders, President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Many of the freedoms and the blessings which we have enjoyed over the course of our lives, we owe in no small measure to General Eisenhower and the selfless service that he inspired. It would be difficult today to imagine the world, how it might look without the moral courage of this commander and the strategic vision of this commander-in-chief. So as we enjoy this magnificent gala this evening, we might spare a moment to remember how General Eisenhower spent this night 70 years ago. It was on the evening of 15 September 1945 that reports began to arrive, small initially, and then they began to grow, from Allied soldiers entering a place in northern Germany called Bergen-Belsen. The British 11th Armored Division would discover there 60,000 frail and freezing souls and individuals clinging to life. And Bergen-Belsen would become a name forever synonymous with inhumanity. But General Eisenhower would not only issue instructions for how the evils of Bergen-Belsen would be documented and preserved, he would later that evening make a point to see them firsthand. His biographers have explained why, so that in the years to come, when peace returned, Ike wanted to personally, as a witness, be able to say that he had seen what degradation was possible at the hands of those doing evil. I have no doubt that all General Eisenhower had seen, both from the depths of the inhumanity of the battlefield, but the heights of human valor that he helped to inspire, would become for him an anchor in the uncertain times that we would all face in the Cold War. It would become a foundation for his impeccable integrity, his constancy, and above all, his humility. Because even on the day he left the White House, after presiding over 8 years of peace, when at every moment the world stood at the precipice of war, after leading the country during one of its greatest economic expansions, after paving the way for the space program and personally desegregating this city, Washington, D.C., President Eisenhower did not, nor did he ever, tout his successes. Instead of delivering a valedictory address, he issued a clarion call on the threat of his day. We face a hostile ideology, he would say, global in scope, atheist in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a far different enemy on this night, but there is reason for his words to resonate with us and the community of nations. Indeed, there are few better ways to describe ISIL, the Islamic State of the Levant and Iraq, than ruthless in purpose and insidious in method. ISIL, and henceforth I shall refer to it by its acronym, its Arabic acronym as Daesh, is a group whose ambitions are tragically global in scope, and certainly Daesh's religious underpinnings are utterly false. So just as we must never forget the horrors that General Eisenhower confronted 70 years ago tonight, we also cannot now ignore the unspeakable suffering that Daesh has inflicted in this world. It's difficult today to describe just how desperate the situation was in Iraq last summer. By June, Daesh fighters began pouring down the Euphrates and Tigris River valleys. Multiple Iraqi cities, including Mosul, a city of 1.5 million people, went down under its heel. A substantial portion of Iraq's military units collapsed. Thousands were being slaughtered, and Daesh intended the extermination of whole minority populations. This was stark and intolerable evil. As Iraq's trauma and agony unfolded, my thoughts were very much with my tribal brothers, my dear friends, who we had fought together alongside to defeat al-Qaeda in 2007. And they were facing an utterly horrific threat. And seeing Daesh ransack the cities and the towns where thousands of American men and women had served selflessly was painful beyond words. I felt, and I will always feel, called to honor the sacrifices of the magnificent troops who came home with the permanent scars, some seen and many unseen, and the memory of those who gave their last full measure of devotion in places like Fallujah and Tal Afar and Sadr City and Ramadi, where tonight desperate fighting is occurring inside that city as the Iraqis defend themselves from Daesh. It was the immediate emergency we saw unfold last summer in Iraq that prompted me to accept the President's invitation to assist him in organizing a global coalition to counter ISIL. Over the past 7 months, I've had the honor to travel to 24 partner capitals, several repeatedly, and to meet with the national leadership. And in that short span, we have indeed assembled a coalition of 62 nations and international organizations, each committed to the campaign to counter ISIL. In fact, this evening, shortly after I conclude these remarks, in fact, instantly after I conclude these remarks, I'll travel to Singapore to participate in important discussions with leaders and experts from across Southeast Asia to determine how we can continue to staunch the flow of ISIL into that precious region. Clearly, there is far more work to be done in the fight against extremism, but our global coalition in support of our partners on the ground has now blunted Daesh's momentum. More than a quarter of the populated territories that Daesh held last summer have been liberated and taken back by Iraqi security forces with the support of the coalition. In creating this kind of global coalition, it's easy to become bogged down in the bureaucracy and the minutiae of detail, to look down at one's feet instead of looking out at the strategic horizon. But what I have never lost sight of, and in fact, what has never been clearer to me in the 44 years that I have served our country, is the essential importance, indeed the centrality, of America's global leadership and the unparalleled convening power that derives from this unique quality. While no nation can afford for a group like Daesh to act with impunity, there is only one nation expected to confront these evils directly. And of course, that nation is our own, the United States of America. Thank you. This is a charge that should fill us all with an enormous sense of pride and an even greater feeling of responsibility and obligation. This is an obligation we have kept. This is a responsibility we have assumed in convening and leading the global coalition to counter this scourge. And in my role serving the President and assisting in coordinating this coalition, it has been my honor once again to see from where the strength of America is really derived. My role as the Special Presidential Envoy has given me the opportunity to work alongside the magnificent men and women who together comprise the greatest fighting force for liberty and human dignity the world has ever known, the men and women of our United States Armed Forces. They represent a legacy of excellence and selfless sacrifice passed down to these men and women through the generations. And whether you served in the Second World War, Korea, Iraq, or if you are a veteran of the Vietnam War, a group I am pleased to see BENS honoring tonight, you have been a part of this history. You have contributed to this rich legacy. All who've worn the uniform would take pride in what I have had the opportunity to witness firsthand. I've seen the professionalism of our trainers and special operators at the Al-Assad Air Base in the Al-Anbar province, training Iraqi army units and Sunni tribal fighters. I've marveled at the precision of our pilots under intense pressure, and I've admired the vigilance and the strength of our young Marines serving at far-flung diplomatic posts, protecting our diplomatic personnel and protecting our foreign policy process. I have to tell you that aside from raising my own family, there is no greater privilege that I have known than leading and serving alongside these men and women. So when I hear historians and authors speak of the greatest generation, I not only think of those who served in General Eisenhower's era, whom Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. I think of all those I have been privileged to serve with today, whom I believe I'm qualified to judge is the new greatest generation. And whenever I'm given the opportunity to speak to audiences like this, I seek to recall their sacrifices, what our magnificent troops do for us every day to deal with this dangerous world. Over the last 13 years of conflict, we have fought a major two-front war in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've maintained decisive presence in the Arabian Gulf and in East Asia, and we've done it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all of this has been borne on the strong, broad shoulders of our young men and women in uniform who, my dear friends, number fewer than 1% of the population of this country. Fewer than 1%. It is they who have kept the wolf from the door. It is they who have guarded us while we've slept. When they operated in 100 places, the names of which we'll never know. And it is they who have stared abject evil in the face and fought for our security. This evening we honor Sergeant Brian Anderson, whose valor is an example of the selfless sacrifice provided by so many. I know that Sergeant Anderson will be recognized later this evening, but let me say, as someone who has served as a commander of forces which contained Ranger strike forces in Afghanistan, I know full well what the courage and the character of these soldiers means to our military and to our nation. And as you hear of Sergeant Anderson's deeds later this evening, let his courage serve as yet another reminder that we are blessed with our own greatest generation, living among us in our time. And Sergeant Anderson, I salute you. Their service is a reminder of the words of President Eisenhower when he once used them to describe this country. He said, "The glory of this nation is that it was conceived in courage, born in sacrifice, and reached its maturity in the unselfish devotion and the labor of patriots. So long as these qualities do endure, so long will this nation stand, free and preeminent among nations." I want to thank each of you here this evening for ensuring that these American qualities do endure, for ensuring that our nation does stand free, and that through your dedication with BENS, your dedication to this great country and to its security, that it will remain preeminent among all nations. Thank you for bestowing upon me this honor for which I am deeply humbled. And I wish God's blessings on each of you, his rich blessings on all of your families, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, BENS has been dedicated to bringing the benefit of business experience to bear for government partners and our armed forces for more than 30 years. This was the vision of our founding member, Stanley Weiss. As a newspaper profile noted, Stanley Weiss realized that only a nonpartisan group of business executives would have the clout and the credibility to appeal for military reform. Thus, BENS came to be. Founder Weiss, it is a privilege yet again to have you and Lisa join us again tonight. Thank you so very much. This brings me, ladies and gentlemen, to our second Eisenhower Award honoree. Kevin Plank represents the epitome of innovation and the American entrepreneur's spirit. As a special teams captain for the University of Maryland football team, Kevin noticed how poorly typical T-shirts held up under the rigors of play. After graduating, he searched until he found a fabric that stood up to the demands of intense physical activity. Under Armour was launched in 1996, and Kevin hit the road, showing his moisture-wicking shirts to athletes and equipment managers in locker rooms across the country. Those shirts ended up revolutionizing performance apparel. I should mention parenthetically that when you next travel to Chicago, on Michigan Avenue is a new storefront for Under Armour. It is a starship. Something you should see. Suffice it to say that Under Armour has been a resounding success. Kevin is widely recognized as one of the most innovative chief executive officers in the country. Last year, he was named a USA Today Person of the Year. Smarter, faster, and more colorful. Just last month, he was recognized as one of the best CEOs by Barron's, no surprise. And then, just last weekend, Under Armour's golf apparel was on display. As Jordan Spieth set records and ultimately won the Masters at Augusta National. Now, we all know that it surely takes talent to spot talent. And my question for Kevin is, how long before Under Armour is making military service uniforms? Not very long, I dare say. Beginning in 2010, Kevin's company partnered with the Wounded Warrior Project to distribute backpacks to newly wounded service members first entering the military treatment facility. Since then, 10,000 backpacks have been distributed and over $3.5 million contributed to support thousands of injured, wounded warriors returning home from the current conflicts and to provide important and needed assistance to families. Under Kevin's leadership and through its Under Armour Freedom campaign, the brand refurbished a number of fire station gymnasiums in the Baltimore City area, as well as building partnerships with other military service organizations such as the Navy SEAL Foundation, the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, and the Unit Scholarship Fund. Kevin, may I ask you please to join me? And while you are coming up to the stage, let me also acknowledge once again Kelly, who joins us here tonight. Kelly, thank you too, because in this business that we all understand, this is a team sport, and we're very grateful to you as well. On behalf of BENS, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to present Kevin Plank with the Eisenhower Award for your dedication to giving back and your service to the amazing members of our military family, but importantly, those in related civilian public service positions and careers as well. So thank you so very much.
So much. My pleasure.
Over to you.
General, thank you so much. It is my distinct pleasure to be here amongst so many great Americans, those that actively either have or presently do serve for us, as well as so many great American patriots. And General, as you spoke those words about me and the founding of our company and where it came from, it was an incredibly kind way of saying that, yes, I just had a real bad sweating problem. Somebody had to do something about it. In fact, I generally judge hospitality by the number of grown men that in one way, shape, or form stand up and pull their own waistbands out of their underpants and show me that they're wearing some version of our product. Having just visited the men's room on my way back here, this is an incredibly hospitable group, so thank you. Thank you for that. I want to thank, honestly, the BENS organization as a whole, Mr. Mosler as well. I had a chance to speak at dinner a little bit, and I also was very fortunate enough to sit directly next to Mr. Stanley Weiss, who's our founder here of BENS. And I want to tell you that he was incredibly deliberate in defining what the mission of BENS was, and that incredibly clear on the mission that this is not a think tank, but a do tank. And there is a difference, as you know. And so I honor you, Mr. Weiss, of continuing that legacy. I also want to thank our other honoree tonight, General Allen. And I've got to tell you, his speech was amazing and had us all, I think, ready to run through a wall by the end of it. But honestly, the service that he has, the reputation he's built, the way that he's done it as well, in reading his biography and watching him over the years and being aware and familiar with him just as an American, as a patriot, incredibly proud. And if we could, one more round of applause for the service that General Allen has done. There are also many friends in the room, beginning with my Under Armour family, and so many of our executives are here with us tonight. We actually had an offsite the last 3 days down here in DC, and it's been an extraordinary couple of days that we continue to come back and find ways that we can continue to perform as a company, and I'm incredibly appreciative for the support that my family has. And it's that same group of individuals that, as General Schwartz spoke about, deliver something like our Under Armour Freedom Program, which we're incredibly proud of, where more than 10% of the proceeds that we have for Under UA Freedom, which are gear that support things like Wounded Warrior Project and several other organizations, as General Schwartz mentioned, this year will be more than a $30 million business. Next year is projected north of a $50 million business. And what that is a vote reminding people that they will never forget, and they will remember our men and women, and those dollars, 100% of which will go strictly to helping our men and women who come home and need that help and support. And I know there are a number of incredibly worthy individuals that are considered for this, and again, I want to thank the BENS organization for giving me this great honor, and it is actually the now more than 10,000 employees at Under Armour who are actually responsible for winning this, and on behalf of them, I accept this award, and they're the ones that make it happen, that support people like our fighting men and women, so thank you. Also in the room, I've got incredible family, beginning with my best friend and my wife, DJ, who's always my support. I've got also, in addition to that, I've got my mother, who's better known as the former mayor of Kensington, amongst other responsibilities that she had in her life, Jane Plank, as well as being the director of intergovernmental affairs and liaison with state and local government officials during both the Reagan, which we sit in this beautiful building tonight, as well as the Bush administrations. And so my wife and my lovely mother, if we could just give them a quick round of applause. Thank you. And I also have a number of my directors in the room tonight, many of which have served, beginning with Tom Sipple, Harvey Sanders, Chip Adams, Buzzy Krongard, who I'm sure many of you in this room know, and also a former award recipient on this very event, but on the opposite side was Admiral Eric Olson, whose last responsibility was down at Special Operations Command, and helped serve for our country very, very importantly. Thank you, Admiral. And then I wanted to mention maybe just one more great American that we're incredibly proud of. And if you have a television set, then you know about this American named Jordan Spieth. And America has found its next great ambassador, and that kid can swing a golf club. And it is no boy, it is a young man, and he is evolving into something incredibly special. And what we saw in Jordan several years ago, when he had no tour status, no rural rankings, but was simply a sophomore at the University of Texas, and he was good, don't kid yourself, he was very good. But more importantly, he had this commitment, he had this look in his eye, he had this spirit that his sport happened to be golf. But no matter what it was, he was going to win. He was going to compete. And everyone saw it on pure display this past weekend. And if you look for a representative of what makes our country great, what makes America unique and different, it is that fighting spirit of never looking back, never taking the easy road, but always pushing forward and somehow finding a way. And it's this same young man When you watch the 21-year-old, when he asked after how he won the green jacket by more than 4 strokes and led wire to wire, which is almost unprecedented to happen, especially for someone as young as he is. He was asked by one reporter, in one word, how would you describe yourself? And without batting an eye, he said aggressive. And very quickly, and I think the reputation I'm proud of is our company, the next question was, is that why you signed with Under Armour? And he said, absolutely. He said, they are young, they are aggressive, and they are fearless. And I say that about my company and the culture and the reputation that we've built as much as anything else. And I just have to tell you, there is nothing more American than that. And for that, we are incredibly, incredibly proud. And I say this because we do live in a country where less than 2 miles in the house where my mother grew up in Georgetown at 1406 35th Street. And as a 23-year-old graduate of the University of Maryland, I set up shop to start my company with $17,000 in startup capital, grabbing a friend from the University of Maryland, a guy named Kip Fulks, who was living just up the street, and settling in and starting our company. And that first year, doing exactly that number, $17,000 in revenues, that first year back in 1996. And it's wonderful to know that through sweat and hustle and guts and an amazing team of people, not individuals, an amazing team of people that when they came together with one common purpose, could build it. 1 person at a time, 2 people at a time, 3 people at a time. And those first 5 years in business we spent growing. 17,000 in revenues our first year, 110,000 our second year, 400,000 was the year that we moved up to Baltimore. $1.3 million, $5 million, 5 years in business growing to our first $5 million. The next 5 years in business growing from 5 to just under $300 million, the year we went public in 2005. The next 5 years growing from under 300 to $1 billion, and that was 2010. So 15 years to our first billion, and last year we eclipsed $3 billion. 15 years to the first billion, in less than 4 years we crossed that $3 billion milestone, and we're not done. As a company who just celebrated our 19th consecutive quarter of 20+% revenue growth and giving consistent outlook about that. At Under Armour, we grow. It is part of who we are, it's our DNA, it is our culture, because if we are not growing, we will die. Which is the reason and the mentality that, again, is so incredibly American. And as I think about that, I think about the ideas I think about Jordan Spieth when asked why he went for it on 13 and 15. And I remember the announcer, if you were watching the telecast from home, you heard him say on 13 on the long par 5, they said, on this shot he's going to be laying up. And you watched him swing a club that didn't look like he was laying up, and you heard the young American yell the words, go hard, get there, go hard. And that mentality was it was us, and we were proud of it. And this is a young man, and there's more to come, but that theme is something that lives with us and will for a very, very long time. So from that, humble beginnings with just a simple idea in Georgetown, it's great to know that we do live in a country that you can go from 17,000 in revs in 96 with 1 employee plus somebody who got paid every now and then, and my partner Kip, to today more than 10,000 people employed globally, offices all over the world, and this year with outlook north of $3.7 billion in revenue. We're incredibly proud of the company that we've built, and frankly, we are just getting started. I wanted to leave maybe with that idea, as impressive as those stats are. One thing that we are always quick to remember is that none of the things we've been able to accomplish, and I spend a lot of time traveling. I did close to 270,000 miles of travel last year all over the world. And I've seen lots of countries and lots of markets, and I can tell you the world is a different place. And I recognize that I was so lucky to be born in the situation that I was, by the parents that I had, and the support that I have today that allows me to realize this freedom with the team of people that have given me that, with the brothers and Scott and Stuart over there that helped form that for me. But none of it happens at all without the blanket of protection that the people in this room continue to work on each and every day. And for that, I say thank you to you, and I applaud you to all of our armed men and women. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And as important as that acknowledgement is, I want to end maybe with one very brief and quick story, which I've told this before, but I say it's the best letter that I ever received as the CEO of Under Armour. And it was a number of years ago, and it was from an Army Ranger who just returned from active duty from the Middle East. And he got back and he wrote me this very nice letter. It was an email, and he just said, "Dear Mr. Plank, I just want to tell you how much myself and the guys in our unit really loved Under Armour. It was the greatest stuff. We loved it. You guys are great. We love the product. You guys really know how to make 130 degrees feel like 120. Thanks." And it was a serious email. And it reminds you that life is all about perspective. So as we sit here and not in some tent somewhere, or holding ourselves back, or being concerned about what's around the corner, but living under this safety, it's something we are incredibly proud of. The general said it, I believe, in his remarks, which I thought were excellent, and something that literally had us all moving with. And then I believe he motivated us all as patriots. And if I can, I'd like to continue to motivate us as entrepreneurs, as I believe it's our country's greatest asset. And obviously, it's becoming one of our greatest exports as well, because we're not the only ones doing it anymore. But if we are going to win, if we are going to continue to lead, if we will continue to be number one, then we must continue to innovate, or we will not like the outcome. So I encourage entrepreneurship at every level, and sometimes people say, what can I do for it? How can I act or be on entrepreneurship? And it always starts with the smallest thing, starting local, staying local, buying local, things like that. But at the smallest level, I'll tell you one thing I do. I never drive past a lemonade stand and don't stop and buy it. Because there's some little boy or some little girl who is going to feel to themselves, look, Mom, what I did. Look what I went and made. Look what I did all by myself. And then it's the parent's job, who is the father or mother of that little boy or little girl, is to teach them about things like taxes. And who actually paid for the cups and the ice and these other things. And you should teach them these lessons and let them know what it feels like. But it is a privilege to pay taxes, as I tell my kids. And we are lucky for it. I gotta tell you, I'm incredibly appreciative, pleased, honored, so many friends in the room, so many others that I didn't get a chance to mention tonight. But I wanna tell you how much I appreciate this award. I appreciate the courage of someone like President Eisenhower and what he meant to us. And if I have one bit of counsel, number one, I'll start with my thanks. I'll say, God bless America. And number two, I'll say, America, continue to go hard, go hard. Let's go for it. Thank you very much.
It has been our privilege, and again, Kevin and DJ and Kathy, thank you for allowing us to spotlight your marvelous achievements and great contributions in ways large and small. We treasure them, and I hope in some small way we reflected that this evening. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the 50th anniversary of the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War. In the spring of 1965, American planes began bombing North Vietnam in Operation Rolling Thunder, and the Marines hit the beach north of Da Nang. It was a hard-fought war with extraordinary investment in time, in lives, and of course in treasure. But a profound loss occurred on the home front when our brave men and women came back from doing what their country asked. Instead of a hero's welcome they deserved, They were in many cases shamed and neglected. That generation of warriors swore that no future soldiers would face the same kind of dishonor. Thus, the veterans of the Gulf War and Operations Iraqi and Enduring Freedom have experienced a completely different homecoming than those experienced by their Vietnam brothers in arms who preceded them. General Chuck Boyd was one of those Vietnam veterans who committed to changing the narrative into one of unconditional support for our troops returning from the fight. For his remarkable military service in war, in captivity, and in public service since retirement, Chuck Boyd reminds us of our debt to deeply proud Vietnam veterans and the 58,000 members whose names are inscribed one by one on the Vietnam Memorial. Few represent the legacy of Vietnam better than General Chuck Boyd. And to him, but importantly, all those who served there and those who did not come home, let us please offer a profound round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our privilege at our dinners to recognize members of the armed forces whose heroic deeds in service to the country single them out as extraordinary. Tonight, we honor Sergeant Brian Anderson of Gilbert, Arizona. And you may have read about Brian in one of the major newspapers that reported on his receiving the nation's second highest award for heroism, the Distinguished Service Cross, for incredible valor. The events that led to this distinction, frankly, are the stuff of fiction. On October 5th, 2013, Sergeant Anderson was serving as a medic in the 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, on deployment to Kandahar, Afghanistan. This is why John Allen resonates with this story. He was one of a team of Rangers who went in to an enemy compound after a high-value target. But the team didn't know that the entire place was wired with improvised explosive devices and a number of suicide bombers. And upon landing, the team split up. Sergeant Anderson was chasing an insurgent with another teammate while the rest of the team hit the compound. Then everything started literally blowing up. And before the night was done, ladies and gentlemen, there were 4 Ranger soldiers dead. 40 more would earn the Purple Heart. When he heard the first explosions, Sergeant Anderson turned and ran to the compound to get to his wounded brethren. The first soldier he reached had been hit by a suicide bomber, and he was being treated by another medic. So Sergeant Anderson pressed on, running past unexploded improvised explosive devices to reach another wounded soldier. The team desperately needed help, but when the medevac aircraft, the helicopter, arrived, the dust from the rotor wash set off yet more explosions, killing one of the nurses who had come to provide aid. 2 more soldiers were killed as they tried to reach Sergeant Anderson and the man that he was treating. And though impacted by these blasts, Sergeant Anderson moved to help one of the newly wounded soldiers. And while he was working on this soldier, another man, a special agent from the military police battalion, accidentally triggered two more IED blasts. So Sergeant Anderson started treating this man, another man trying to reach them. Set off yet another explosion, this one claiming the would-be rescuer's legs. Anderson moved to help this man as well, providing treatment for over an hour and a half until he could be evacuated, carrying him to the ambulance and accompanying him to Kandahar Airfield emergency room. Many of us have been there, know what it's like. He did this, Sergeant Anderson did this despite 7 IED or suicide vest blasts within 10 meters, within 30 minutes' time. And Sergeant Anderson could do this because he relied on his training and a conviction, a profound conviction that many of you here in the room share, that a soldier or sailor, airman or Marine, or especially a medic, never leaves a wounded battle buddy behind. And as he says, I never even thought twice about running to one of those wounded warriors. Those guys are basically my family. So when one of them is hurt and I'm their medic, it's my job to make them better. Sergeant Anderson, please join me on the stage. Sergeant Anderson, thank you for your courage and commitment and the medical care that you provided fellow soldiers wounded on the battlefield. Your bravery saved lives, but so important. It is so emblematic of those of your generation to which John Allen referred, who have volunteered to serve. Let us get a picture. And maybe one last round of applause. Can Kelly stand up? There are 2 jobs in our armed forces. that require very special spouses. One is being a medic, and the other is being an explosive ordnance disposal tech. You know what medics do now. You know. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our program for the evening. And before we depart, may I ask you to acknowledge the BENS staff who worked so diligently to put together this successful and enjoyable evening. Would the staff please stand, please? Thank you. If you're interested in joining BENS, Kevin, or would like to learn more, forgive me, please let me know. Seriously, this is a give-back organization. This is about helping our government partners perform better, to be, as Kevin suggested, bold, courageous, entrepreneurial. How can our government partners learn those skills if we don't offer them? They won't and they can't. And so that's our mission. But we'd love to have you on the BENS team. And so thank you again for joining us and honoring both John Allen and Kevin Plank. And thank you again for recognizing some of the nation's most extraordinary Americans in both the private and the public sector. Thank you so very much. We look forward to having you at the next event in New York City in the fall. Thank you.